What happens when an ordinary excavation unleashes a power capable of destroying entire galaxies? You won't believe how two unlikely heroes turned the tide against forces that should never have been awakened. Deep in the heart of the galaxy, on a desolate planet called Xeron, an ancient secret lies buried beneath layers of dust and time. Humanity's insatiable curiosity has led them to uncover something that should have remained hidden forever. They found the weapon of gods. Now they're all doomed. A team of explorers, led by Jacob Stone, an Earth archaeologist with a reputation for discovering the impossible, stumbles upon an artifact unlike anything the universe has ever seen. Standing beside him is Lyra Torin, a striking young alien whose beauty is matched only by her mysterious past. Together, they will face a choice that could determine the fate of the entire galaxy. As they dig deeper into the secrets of this ancient device, they realize they've awakened forces beyond their comprehension. The weapon hums with power, its surface etched with symbols that seem to shift and change before their eyes. Each discovery brings them closer to understanding its purpose and its danger. But knowledge comes at a price. Unbeknownst to them, others have taken notice. Shadowy figures from across the stars are converging on Xeron, each seeking to claim the weapon for their own dark ambitions. Time is running out, and every decision could mean life or death for everyone. The two unlikely allies must navigate treacherous terrain, both physical and moral. Can they resist the temptation of ultimate power? Or will the lure of godlike abilities prove too strong to ignore? One thing is certain. Once unleashed, there may be no turning back. Don't miss a single moment of this epic journey. Hit that subscribe button now to ensure you're ready for what happens next. Trust us. You won't want to miss where this story goes. The twin suns of Xeron hung low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the cracked, barren expanse. Jacob Stone knelt by a jagged fissure in the ground, his gloved hands brushing away layers of crimson dust. His breath hitched as he uncovered a fragment of something unnatural, smooth, cold, and impossibly intricate. It wasn't rock. It wasn't metal. "This isn't natural," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Behind him, Lyra Torin watched silently, her luminous eyes reflecting the dying light of the suns. She had warned him about coming here, but Jacob's determination was unshakable. This was why people called him reckless or brilliant, depending on who you asked. The site was eerily quiet, save for the occasional gust of wind carrying grains of sand that stung like needles. Jacob's equipment beeped erratically, struggling to make sense of the strange readings emanating from below. Whatever lay beneath them defied conventional science. As he worked, Lyra stepped closer, her boots crunching softly against the brittle ground. "You're playing with fire," she said, her voice tinged with unease. "Some things are meant to stay buried." Jacob glanced up, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. "And some things are worth uncovering," he replied, though even he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Their excavation revealed more fragments, each piece fitting together like a cosmic puzzle. Symbols began to emerge, glowing faintly as if alive. Jacob traced one with his finger, feeling a strange warmth radiate through his glove. A sudden tremor shook the ground, nearly knocking him off balance. Lyra grabbed his arm, pulling him back just as the earth split open wider, revealing a cavernous void below. From within came a low hum, resonant and alien. They exchanged a glance, Jacob's filled with wonder, Lyra's with dread. "We've only scratched the surface, but trust me, this is just the beginning." Stay tuned to find out what happens when these two delve deeper into the unknown and discover truths that could shatter everything they know. Jacob hesitated at the edge of the chasm, peering into the abyss below. The hum grew louder, vibrating through his chest like a second heartbeat. Lyra activated her wrist-mounted light, casting a beam into the darkness. What they saw took their breath away, a massive crystalline structure, pulsating with an inner light that shifted colors unpredictably. Its surface was covered in glyphs identical to those they'd found earlier, but here they seemed to move, swirling like liquid mercury. "It's alive," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. Stepping cautiously onto a narrow ledge, Jacob descended further, his mind racing with questions. Who built this? How long had it been here? And most importantly, what did it do? Every step felt heavier, as though the air itself resisted their intrusion. When Jacob placed his hand on the artifact, a surge of energy coursed through him, flooding his mind with fragmented images. Worlds burning, civilizations crumbling, faces screaming in terror. He stumbled backward, gasping for air. Lyra caught him, steadying him with surprising strength. "What did you see?" she demanded, her tone urgent. Before he could answer, the ground shook violently again. Dust rained down from above, and cracks spiderwebbed across the walls. Something was waking up, something powerful. Panic clawed at Jacob's throat, but he forced himself to focus. "We need to stabilize it," he said, scrambling to retrieve his scanner. But the device was useless now, its screen flickering wildly. Lyra grabbed his arm, her grip tight. "Forget your machines. We need to leave. Now." Yet neither of them moved. The artifact pulsed brighter, its rhythm matching the pounding in their ears. Somewhere deep inside, Jacob knew they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. And once they crossed that line, there would be no going back. "We're on the verge of something massive. You can feel it, can't you? Don't look away now. The real chaos is about to unfold. Stick around to witness the moment everything changes." The artifact's glow intensified, bathing the cavern in an otherworldly light that seemed to warp reality itself. Shadows danced unnaturally on the walls, twisting into shapes that defied logic. Jacob and Lyra stood frozen, their instincts screaming at them to run, but their curiosity rooting them in place. "This isn't just some relic," Lyra said, her voice barely audible over the growing hum. "It's a key, or a trigger." Her words hung heavy in the air, sinking into Jacob like a stone. He glanced at her, his mind racing. If she was right, and he had no reason to doubt her, then they weren't dealing with an archaeological find anymore. They were staring down the barrel of something far more dangerous. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted violently, throwing them off balance. Jacob hit the rocky surface hard, his breath knocked out of him. Lyra landed nearby, rolling to her feet with feline grace. She reached for him, shouting, "Move!" But before they could retreat, a deep rumble echoed through the cavern, followed by a deafening crack. The artifact split open, revealing a core of swirling energy that pulsed like a living thing. It wasn't just glowing, it was watching them. Jacob scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding. "What the hell is happening?" he shouted, his voice raw with fear and disbelief. Lyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared at the artifact, her expression unreadable. Then slowly, she said, "It knows we're here." Those 4 words sent a chill down Jacob's spine. Before he could respond, the energy surged outward, engulfing them in a blinding wave of light. For a moment, everything went silent. When the light faded, Jacob found himself lying on the ground, disoriented but unharmed. Lyra was already on her feet, scanning the area with wide eyes. The cavern had changed. The walls shimmered with faint traces of the same energy, and the air felt heavier, charged with an almost electric tension. "We triggered something," Jacob muttered, struggling to stand. But what? Lyra shook her head, her jaw tight. Whatever it is, we need to figure it out fast. That energy signature is broadcasting now. Someone or something is going to come looking. As if on cue, the distant sound of engines pierced the silence. Jacob and Lyra exchanged a glance, both recognizing the unmistakable hum of approaching spacecraft. "They're here," Lyra said, her tone grim. Jacob frowned. "Who's here?" But deep down he already knew. Whoever or whatever had been monitoring this planet had taken notice of their discovery. And judging by the speed of those ships, they weren't coming to congratulate them. "We need to move," Lyra urged, grabbing Jacob's arm and pulling him toward the exit. But as they reached the ledge leading back to the surface, they realized their path was blocked. A massive chunk of the ceiling had collapsed during the tremor, sealing off their escape route. Trapped, they turned back to face the artifact, its pulsing glow casting eerie shadows across the cavern. Jacob clenched his fists, frustration boiling over. "Great. Now what?" Lyra didn't hesitate. "Now we fight." Before Jacob could ask what she meant, she pulled a compact device from her belt, a weapon unlike anything he'd ever seen. Its sleek design and faintly glowing edges suggested advanced alien technology. "Where did you get that?" he asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. Lyra gave him a sharp look. "Does it matter? You want to survive, you'll trust me." With that, she activated the weapon, and it sprang to life with a low hum. The first ship descended into view, its sleek black hull gleaming ominously in the dim light. It hovered silently above the entrance to the cavern, casting long shadows across the landscape. Jacob squinted, trying to make out any identifying marks, but the vessel was featureless aside from a single glowing insignia etched into its side. "That symbol," Lyra whispered, her voice laced with dread. "I've seen it before. Raiders. Mercenaries." Jacob swallowed hard. "And they're here for the artifact." The ship disgorged a team of heavily armed figures clad in dark armor, their faces obscured by visors that glinted menacingly in the light. They moved with precision, fanning out across the cavern with weapons drawn. Jacob and Lyra pressed themselves against the wall, hidden in the shadows cast by the artifact's glow. "What do we do now?" Jacob whispered, his voice trembling. Lyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she raised her weapon, aiming carefully at one of the intruders. "We take them out before they see us," she replied, her tone cold and resolute. Jacob hesitated, his mind racing. These weren't archaeologists or explorers, they were killers, and judging by their gear, they were well prepared for whatever lay ahead. "There are too many of them," he said, his voice barely audible. Lyra shot him a sidelong glance. "Then don't miss." Without waiting for a response, she fired, the blast from her weapon striking one of the mercenaries square in the chest. The impact sent him sprawling, his body crumpling to the ground. Chaos erupted instantly. The remaining mercenaries spun toward the source of the attack, their weapons blazing. Bolts of energy ricocheted off the cavern walls, illuminating the space in flashes of searing light. Jacob ducked instinctively, his heart hammering in his chest. "You couldn't have aimed for someone farther away?" he hissed, scrambling to avoid the incoming fire. Lyra smirked despite the danger. "Where's the fun in that?" For several tense minutes, they fought their way through the cavern, using the terrain to their advantage. The artifact loomed large behind them, its energy pulsing erratically as though feeding off the conflict. Jacob grabbed a fallen mercenary's weapon, its unfamiliar weight awkward in his hands. "How are we supposed to win this?" he shouted over the din. Lyra fired another shot, taking down another enemy. "We don't have to win," she replied. "We just have to survive long enough to figure out how to stop them." The battle raged on, each passing second feeling like an eternity. Jacob and Lyra worked in tandem, their movements becoming increasingly synchronized as adrenaline sharpened their focus. Despite being outnumbered, they managed to hold their ground, picking off the mercenaries one by one. But the cost was high. Energy blasts scorched the walls around them, sending chunks of rock tumbling to the ground. The air grew thick with smoke and dust, making it harder to see. Just when it seemed like they might gain the upper hand, a deafening roar echoed through the cavern. Jacob froze, his blood running cold. "What was that?" he demanded, his voice shaking. Lyra's expression darkened. "Reinforcements." Sure enough, a second ship descended from above, disgorging even more armored figures. This time they carried heavier weapons, cannons capable of leveling entire sections of the cavern. "We can't fight that," Jacob said, panic creeping into his voice. Lyra grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the artifact. "We don't have to. We use it." "Are you insane?" Jacob hissed, resisting her pull. "That thing nearly killed us earlier." Lyra didn't slow down. "And it might save us now. Trust me, Jacob. Do you have a better idea?" He opened his mouth to argue, but the sight of the advancing mercenaries silenced him. Reluctantly, he followed her, his mind racing with doubts. What if activating the artifact made things worse? What if it unleashed something they couldn't control? Lyra reached the base of the artifact first, her fingers moving quickly over its surface. The glyphs responded to her touch, shifting and rearranging themselves in patterns that seemed almost alive. "What are you doing?" Jacob asked, his voice urgent. "I'm accessing its systems," she replied, her tone clipped. "If I can interface with it, maybe I can create a diversion." Before Jacob could respond, the artifact emitted a low, resonant hum, its glow intensifying until it filled the entire cavern. The mercenaries paused, their weapons lowering slightly as they stared at the artifact in awe or fear. Then, without warning, the energy surged outward again, this time forming a barrier between Jacob, Lyra, and their attackers. The mercenaries opened fire, but their blasts harmlessly dissipated against the shimmering shield. "It worked," Jacob breathed, relief washing over him. Lyra didn't share his optimism. "For now. But we're not safe yet." The barrier held, but it was clear it wouldn't last forever. The mercenaries regrouped, their leader barking orders in a guttural language neither Jacob nor Lyra understood. They began setting up equipment near the edge of the barrier, their intentions obvious. They were planning to breach it. Jacob watched anxiously, his mind racing. "How long do we have?" he asked, turning to Lyra. She didn't answer immediately, her focus still on the artifact. Finally, she said, "Not long enough." Jacob clenched his fists, frustration bubbling over. "There has to be something else we can do. Some way to turn this thing against them." Lyra's eyes narrowed as she considered his words. Slowly, she nodded. "Maybe, but it's risky." Jacob met her gaze, determination hardening his features. "Riskier than staying here and waiting for them to break through?" Lyra hesitated, then shook her head. "No, let's do it." Together, they began working on the artifact, their hands moving in sync as they manipulated its glyphs. Each touch sent waves of energy rippling across its surface, the symbols shifting and rearranging in complex patterns. Jacob felt a strange connection to the artifact, as though it were responding to his thoughts as much as his actions. "It's learning," he murmured, half to himself. Lyra glanced at him sharply. "What did you say?" He shook his head. "Nothing. Just keep going." The mercenaries outside grew restless, their leader pacing back and forth as his team worked frantically to disable the barrier. One of them approached the artifact cautiously, holding a device that emitted a low-frequency pulse. The barrier flickered, its glow dimming slightly. "They're weakening it," Jacob said, his voice tight with urgency. Lyra nodded, her movements becoming faster and more frantic. "Almost there," she muttered, her brow furrowed in concentration. Finally, with a burst of energy, the artifact came alive in a way neither of them had anticipated. Its glow expanded outward, engulfing the entire cavern in a blinding light. When the light faded, the mercenaries were gone, vanished without a trace. Jacob stared in stunned silence, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. "What did we do?" he whispered. Lyra didn't answer. She simply stared at the artifact, her expression unreadable. The cavern fell eerily silent, the absence of the mercenaries' presence leaving behind a void that felt almost oppressive. Jacob turned to Lyra, his voice trembling. Did we kill them?" Lyra's gaze remained fixed on the artifact, her expression inscrutable. "I don't think so," she finally said, her tone measured. "But we transported them somewhere else, somewhere far away." Jacob's stomach churned at the implications. "And where exactly is somewhere else?" Lyra shook her head. "I don't know, but wherever it is, it's probably not friendly." Before either of them could dwell on the consequences of their actions, the artifact began to shift again. Its glyphs glowed brighter, pulsing in a rhythm that seemed almost communicative. Jacob stepped closer, his curiosity overriding his caution. "It's trying to tell us something," he said, his voice filled with wonder. Lyra grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Or warn us." Her words sent a chill down Jacob's spine. The artifact's energy surged once more, this time projecting images directly into their minds. Visions of destruction flooded their consciousness. Planets consumed by fire, civilizations reduced to ash, countless lives extinguished in an instant. Jacob stumbled backward, clutching his head as the onslaught of images overwhelmed him. "Stop it!" he shouted, his voice breaking. Lyra steadied him, her own face pale with shock. "It's showing us what it's capable of," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What it was designed to do." Jacob's mind raced as the visions subsided, leaving behind a profound sense of dread. "This isn't just a weapon," he said, his voice hollow. "It's a harbinger of annihilation." Lyra nodded grimly. "And we've unlocked it." The weight of their discovery settled over them like a leaden blanket. They had uncovered something beyond comprehension, something that could reshape or destroy the galaxy. "What do we do now?" Jacob asked, his voice trembling. Lyra's expression hardened. "We find a way to shut it down. Permanently." Shutting down the artifact proved easier said than done. Every attempt to deactivate it only seemed to amplify its power, the glyphs glowing brighter and the energy pulses growing more erratic. Jacob and Lyra worked tirelessly, their hands moving in tandem as they tried to decipher the artifact's cryptic language. "There has to be a failsafe," Jacob muttered, his frustration mounting. Lyra shook her head. "If there is, it's not obvious. Whoever built this didn't want it turned off easily." Their efforts drew the attention of something new, something far more sinister. From the depths of the cavern emerged a shadowy figure, its form shifting and indistinct, as though it existed halfway between reality and imagination. Jacob froze, his breath catching in his throat. "What is that?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Lyra's grip on her weapon tightened. "A guardian," she replied, her tone grim. "And it doesn't look happy." The figure advanced slowly, its movements fluid and deliberate. As it drew closer, details began to emerge. Glowing eyes, elongated limbs, and a face that seemed to twist and contort with every step. Jacob instinctively raised his weapon, but Lyra stopped him. "Don't," she warned. "It's not like the mercenaries. Bullets won't work here." Jacob lowered his weapon reluctantly, his mind racing. "Then what do we do?" Lyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped forward, placing herself between Jacob and the approaching figure. "I'll distract it," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "You find a way to shut this thing down." Jacob shook his head. "No way. I'm not leaving you alone with that thing." Lyra turned to him, her expression fierce. "You don't have a choice. Trust me, Jacob. We're running out of time." Lyra moved with calculated precision, drawing the Guardian's attention away from Jacob and toward herself. Its glowing eyes locked onto her, and it let out a low, guttural growl that reverberated through the cavern. Jacob hesitated, torn between helping her and focusing on the artifact. Finally, with a deep breath, he turned back to the task at hand, his mind racing. He had to succeed for her sake and for the sake of the galaxy. The artifact's glyphs continued to shift, their patterns growing increasingly complex. Jacob's fingers moved across its surface, guided by intuition as much as logic. He felt a strange connection to it, as though it were testing him, probing his resolve. Then suddenly he found it, a sequence of glyphs that seemed to resonate with his touch. "Got it!" he shouted, his voice filled with triumph. But before he could activate the sequence, the Guardian let out an ear-splitting roar. Jacob turned just in time to see Lyra narrowly dodge a swipe from its clawed hand. She retaliated with a blast from her weapon, but the energy dissipated harmlessly against the creature's form. "Jacob, hurry!" she shouted, her voice strained. With no time to waste, Jacob activated the sequence. The artifact's glow dimmed, its energy contracting inward until it was nothing more than a faint hum. The Guardian froze, its form flickering like a dying flame before dissipating entirely. Jacob exhaled shakily, relief washing over him. "It's done," he said, his voice trembling. Lyra joined him, her face pale but determined. "For now," she replied, "but we're not out of the woods yet." The cavern fell silent once more, but the sense of relief was short-lived. Jacob and Lyra stood side by side, their bodies tense as they surveyed the aftermath. The artifact's glow had dimmed to a faint pulse, its surface now cold and inert under their touch. Yet neither of them dared to celebrate. "It's quiet," Jacob said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Too quiet." Lyra nodded, her sharp eyes scanning the shadows that clung stubbornly to the edges of the cavern. "This place feels wrong, like it's holding its breath." As if in response to his words, the ground beneath them trembled slightly, followed by a low, grinding sound emanating from deep within the earth. Jacob instinctively reached for Lyra's arm, steadying himself as cracks began to form along the walls. Dust rained down from above, and the air grew heavier, charged with an almost electric tension. "What now?" he muttered, frustration creeping into his tone. Lyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she knelt by the artifact, running her fingers over its surface. "It's not done," she said finally, her voice tight. "We only suppressed it. It's still active, just dormant." Jacob's stomach churned at her words. "So we're sitting on a ticking time bomb?" Lyra rose to her feet, brushing off her hands. "More like a sleeping dragon. And trust me, dragons don't stay asleep forever." Her gaze shifted to the collapsed entrance blocking their escape route. "We need to get out of here before it wakes up again. Or worse, before someone else finds us." Before they could formulate a plan, a new sound echoed through the cavern. A rhythmic tapping, like footsteps but too deliberate to belong to any natural creature. Jacob turned toward the source, his heart pounding. "Please tell me that's not another guardian," he whispered. Lyra shook her head, her expression grim.
No.
"That's something else entirely." From the darkness emerged a figure cloaked in shimmering robes, its face obscured by a hood that seemed to swallow the light around it. In its hand, it held a staff adorned with glowing runes that pulsed in sync with the artifact. The figure stopped a few paces away, its presence radiating an aura of authority and menace. Jacob instinctively stepped forward, positioning himself slightly ahead of Lyra. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice steady despite the unease clawing at his chest. The figure tilted its head, the movement unnervingly fluid. When it spoke, its voice was layered, as though multiple voices were speaking in unison. "I am Kael'Viwarin, Keeper of the Veil," it intoned, each word resonating like a bell. "And you have meddled with forces beyond your comprehension." Lyra moved closer to Jacob, her weapon raised but not aimed directly at the figure. "We didn't ask for this," she said sharply, her tone defiant. "We're trying to fix what others left broken." Kael'Viwaren's hidden gaze lingered on her for a moment before shifting to the artifact. "You cannot fix what was never broken," it replied cryptically. "This device was created for a purpose, to maintain balance. Your interference has disrupted that equilibrium." Jacob frowned, his mind racing. "Balance? You call destroying entire civilizations balance?" Kael'Viwaren's staff glowed brighter, casting eerie shadows across the cavern. "You see only destruction because your vision is limited. What appears as chaos to you is harmony on a grander scale."
Lyra snortet derisiveli.
"Harmony doesn't require genocide." The figure turned its attention back to her, its voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Do not presume to lecture me, child. I have walked among stars older than your species." Tension crackled in the air as the standoff continued. Jacob glanced at Lyra, silently communicating his next move. She gave him a subtle nod, understanding his intent. "If this thing is so important," Jacob said, stepping forward cautiously, "then why leave it unprotected? Why make it easy for anyone to stumble upon?" Kael'Viwaren's reply was slow and deliberate. "Because those who find it must prove themselves worthy or perish." Without warning, Kael'Viwaren raised its staff, and the artifact flared to life once more, bathing the cavern in blinding light. Jacob shielded his eyes, his instincts screaming at him to run, but his feet felt rooted to the spot. The energy surged outward, forming intricate patterns in the air that seemed to dance and twist like living creatures. Lyra grabbed Jacob's arm, pulling him back just as one of the tendrils lashed out, narrowly missing them. "Prove yourselves," Kael'Viwaren declared, its voice echoing ominously, "or be consumed." The test began immediately. The cavern transformed around them, the solid rock dissolving into a labyrinthine expanse of floating platforms suspended over an endless void. Each platform shimmered with glyphs similar to those on the artifact, their meanings unclear but undeniably significant. "This isn't just a trial," Lyra said, her voice strained. "It's a puzzle. And if we fail—" She trailed off, her expression darkening. Jacob clenched his fists. "Then we die." "Got it." They moved quickly, leaping from platform to platform as the glyphs shifted and rearranged themselves unpredictably. Every step felt like a gamble, the patterns changing faster than they could process. At one point, Jacob misjudged a jump, catching himself on the edge of a crumbling platform. Lyra reached down, grabbing his hand just as the structure gave way beneath him. "Not today," she said firmly, pulling him up with surprising strength. He nodded his thanks, his breathing ragged. "We need to work together. Faster." Kael'Viwaren watched silently from afar, its staff glowing steadily as the labyrinth grew increasingly complex. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, each second feeling heavier than the last. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the center, a massive platform marked with a single, glowing symbol that pulsed in rhythm with the artifact's core. "This is it," Jacob said, his voice filled with determination. "Whatever happens, we do it together." Lyra nodded, her grip tightening on his hand. Together, they placed their palms on the symbol. The instant their hands touched the glyph, the labyrinth dissolved around them, leaving them standing once more in the cavern. The artifact loomed large before them, its glow steady and calm. KLVYRN lowered its staff, its posture relaxing slightly. "You have proven yourselves worthy," it intoned, its layered voice softer now. "But know this, the burden you carry will weigh heavily upon you. The artifact is a tool of immense power, but also of great peril. Use it wisely or not at all." Jacob exchanged a glance with Lyra, both of them processing the gravity of the moment. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. KLVYRN gestured toward the artifact. "That choice is yours. Destroy it and you sever the thread of balance, but risk unleashing consequences you cannot foresee. Preserve it, and you shoulder the responsibility of guarding it from those who would misuse it." Lyra stepped forward, her expression resolute. "There's no right answer, is there?" The figure inclined its head. "Only choices and their consequences." Before either of them could respond further, KLVYRN vanished, its form dissolving into the air like mist. The cavern fell silent once more, the weight of their decision pressing down on them. Jacob sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Guess we're on our own now." Lyra nodded, her gaze fixed on the artifact. "For better or worse." With the immediate threat neutralized, Jacob and Lyra turned their attention to escaping the cavern. Using tools salvaged from their earlier excavation, they worked tirelessly to clear a path through the collapsed debris blocking the exit. Hours passed, their muscles aching and their bodies covered in dust, but neither voiced a complaint. They were driven by a shared understanding. What lay behind them was far more dangerous than exhaustion or injury. Finally, sunlight broke through the rubble, streaming into the cavern and illuminating their weary faces. Jacob leaned against the rocky wall, taking a moment to catch his breath. "We made it," he said, his voice tinged with disbelief. Lyra stood beside him, her arms crossed as she gazed out at the desolate landscape of Xeron. "For now," she replied, her tone measured. "But this isn't over." "Not really." Jacob nodded, his mind already turning to the future. "We'll need help, people we can trust. Scientists, engineers, maybe even politicians willing to listen."
Lyra simirket faintly.
"Good luck finding anyone willing to believe us." He chuckled dryly. "Yeah, well, we've got nothing if not persistence." As they prepared to leave the planet, Jacob paused, looking back at the cavern one last time. The artifact remained buried beneath layers of rock, its secrets locked away, for now. But he knew they couldn't ignore it forever. Somewhere out there, others would come searching, drawn by whispers of power and destruction. And when they did, Jacob and Lyra would be ready. "Let's go," Lyra said, snapping him out of his thoughts. He nodded, following her toward their ship. As they lifted off, leaving Xeron behind, Jacob felt a strange mix of relief and foreboding. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Because in a universe teetering on the brink of chaos, sometimes all you could do was hold on and hope for the best. Don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling adventures across the stars.